access at another point in time. Hold on just a second. So we'll go ahead and get started today. I do want to say welcome. I'm glad you're here. Today is a little bit different than a lot of our FSC trainings. So I'm going to invite you to just take a minute to make sure you're comfortable. If you need a drink or a blanket or whatever it is that you need to make yourself comfortable. Because today we're going to spend a lot of time watching video, which is a little bit different than what we've done in the past. And I'm going to explain why here in just a little bit. But I'm going to give you just a minute to do that. So for the FSC reminders, there's just a few quick things I just want to make sure everybody understands. It was in email, but sometimes it's a little bit tricky to understand. And if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me. So this is a series. It's 6 hours total. There are 3 different dates that we're meeting. Anybody that is providing services is welcome to attend these meetings. I do record all of them, so you can access them following the meeting, or if people in your program weren't able to come today, then it can be pulled out of Basecamp and they can watch it later. The coordinators for each program have identified who has access to that Basecamp. So if you click on the link, you may not be able to do that, but if you need help finding out who in your program has access to it, then you can reach out to me or you can reach out to your coordinator, and either one of us will be able to help you with that. And then they can download the video and be able to share it with anybody that needs access to it. So to receive a certificate of attendance, you need to attend all 3 sessions live, which means be here during the time that we are holding the meeting. Those certificates are going to be distributed following the final session. So that'll be in April. Following the April session, we'll reach out to the coordinators and they'll let us know who attended all 3 sessions to be able to get the certificate. So as we started to plan this year's series of FSC trainings, we tried to be really careful about making sure we're listening to the feedback that we've gotten, as well as the areas of need that our data has shown in the past year or so, as well as some questions that have come up. And so our plan this year is to start with the family voice. We've had the family voice before, but in recent years, much of the the voices that you've heard have not necessarily been from Kansas. So the voices that you're going to hear today are from Kansas. And so they'll have a firsthand view of what services look like in Kansas, which is, I think, really nice. And the reason we are starting with families is because we know that we can learn so much more from listening to the people that we're providing those services to than we ever could from reading a book or listening to somebody else talk about it. And so that's why it's just so important that we do that. We also know that in Kansas, we do a really good job of working with our families. And I want to be able to showcase that for you and celebrate it with all of you. Our second session is going to be Lisa Terry. She's going to talk to us a little bit more about how it is that you are developing those strong relationships, not only with our families, but also with the other partners that we're working with. So possibly some childcare providers, doctors, WIC, any of those partners that you come into contact with. And then finally, we're going to end with another program who's going to share their experience, what they've done to build those relationships and to have a really nice success story that we can share with everybody, or that they can share with everybody. So I would be remiss to not start with this thank you. So before we do dive in, I just want to send a huge thank you out to, there were 3 programs that answered the call for support this year for today's session. And it is so much appreciated. I appreciate your willingness to be vulnerable with everybody here by answering that call for support, and you kind of put yourselves on blast to the entire state of Kansas, and I do recognize that, and I appreciate it so much. But because of you, we were able to include the family voice from Kansas. Um, so what they did for me is they put me into contact with 3 different families that they didn't know what I was going to ask of these families, and they didn't know what these families were going to say about them. So I think that just puts a lot of trust in not only the families, but in me, um, being able to ask questions and allowing these families to be able to share their story. So thank you so much to those 3 people. You're going to hear who those 3 people are a little bit later as we go through the session. And then also I am going to share this training with the families that did participate. All of them requested to be able to see what it is that we're sharing with our FSCs. So I'm going to share this recording with them, and I want to make sure and give them a thank you. Thank you for being willing to meet with me. All the families have, of course, scheduling is tricky. Families are busy. They've got lots of things going on, but all 3 of these families made the time to meet with me and to share their story and allow me to record them and then share the story with you. So thank you to all of you. So our outcomes for today, you can see them on the slide here. We're going to try to do our best to identify those family-centered practices that you're hearing within the family perspective. We're going to identify how we are building the family's capacity and how that is benefiting those families when we do that. And then we're also going to work to understand how the families understand what it is that you're sharing with them about their parental rights, and then how those play out in real life settings. So as always, we like to look to DEC for recommended practices. They inform us of what we should be doing with our families. So as you listen today to the families who are sharing their stories, I believe if you had a bingo card, you would be able to put a red dot on every single one of these practices, with the exception of number 8. And that's only because that is for families who have dual languages, and all 3 of the families that I spoke to this time do speak English. So that's the only reason that we couldn't check off number 8. But I'm going to give you a minute just to look through each of these practices, and then as you're listening today, I want you to sort of keep this in the back of your mind and think about how you're hearing these play out. So I know you heard me say that the part of today is a celebration. So when you look at these practices, I believe that you're going to hear and you're going to see that what it's telling us is that when we are using the practices that have been outlined for us and that are researched to be what's best for families, then you're going to have fabulous outcomes with the families you're working with. So as I interviewed the families that I was working with, the questions on the screen were sort of the outline that I asked of different things that I asked. I did meet with each of the families individually. I was working within their time frame. So it was just darn near possible for all 3 of us to meet at the same time, or all 4 of us to be able to meet at the same time. So we did meet separately. They had the questions ahead of time so that they could think about how they wanted to respond to the questions. But these are the questions that I did ask. So in an effort to sort of streamline the videos, I did some editing. Please know that this is not my forte, so it's going to feel a little bit clunky. I did the best that I can to make it so that it wasn't too annoying, but it is definitely amateur because I don't know how to do that all by myself very well. And then, I did allow for the families to just respond. I asked them to respond honestly. Just tell me the good, tell me the bad, tell me the ugly, tell me anything that you want to tell me. So I hope that what comes across is that I'm going to let you actually decide what comes across to you, because at the end of this video, I'm going to give you an opportunity to respond and think about what your reflections you had. So while you are listening, I want you to please think about how your practices with the families that you are providing services would allow the families to answer these same questions. Think about how you might do something either the same as what these providers did with these families, or maybe how you might do something a little bit differently. And then finally, think about what a powerful impact that you are making on the families that you're lucky enough to be able to provide those services to. So some additional thoughts for reflection. Or those are the same things. Sorry. And if you want to jot those down, that's okay. I'm going to ask you sort of at the end of this first video to share some of your reflections. So if you're thinking of those while you're listening, just go ahead and jot them down so that you don't forget them. The first video that we're going to watch is just a little over an hour long. So without further ado, I'm going to have you sit back. You're welcome to keep your camera on, or you're welcome to turn it off, however you're most comfortable, and listen to what these families have to say. Okay, can somebody please give me a thumbs up that my screen followed me and you are looking at the first parent? Okay.
Well, my name is Madison Rose. I am a mom to 4. My oldest is 9. I've got a 4-year-old, and then I have twin boys who are 2 years old. And I am a stay-at-home mom. Most of the time, I did start working part-time to sort of get back into some routine and normalcy outside of the home, because I really enjoy having that outlet and whatnot. And I'm married. I don't know what else to say.
All right, my name is Leah Zawonitzer. I'm one of Everly's moms. Yeah, I guess really it about me.
She also works in IT, if that matters. But my name is Naomi Zawonitzer. I am a mom to 2 beautiful girls, and we both work in the healthcare field.
Sure. My name is Ashley Sheridan, and I have 3 kids. The one that you'll hear most about is Lucas. He has trisomy 21 and some other heart defects and some lung issues, and had a laundry list of things when he arrived early. But I'm married. We live in central Kansas, and I actually teach preschool. I have the 3 and 4-year-olds in Hillsboro, and I in 2017 received my master's degree in early childhood education and special education. So this experience, you'll hear a little different sides, I guess, as we go through some of these questions. So hopefully it can still be helpful for you.
How was it that you became involved with infant toddler services?
So when my twins were born, we ended up going to the hospital for my son Daxton, and he had caught a virus of some sort that was, I guess it dysregulated him in a way that he was having trouble breathing and being able to drink his milk and whatnot. And with being out in Southwest Kansas. We don't really have the proper, I guess, tools in our hospital and our small little emergency rooms. So they sent us to Wichita. And as they were trying to figure out what was going on with him, I had made mention of a few concerns that I had with him, that he was struggling to eat properly, and just some things seemed off to me about how he was. I've had kids before. I'm not a new and experienced mom, and I kind of knew the things that were normal and to be expected, but the things that my son were doing were out of my parameters of knowledge. And I was like, I just don't understand what's going on. So the doctors at the hospital was like, well, when we do send you home, once we get him breathing better and feeling better, we'll send Arrowhead West out to your house. And I was like, okay, sounds good. I didn't really know what all that entailed, but I knew that they had an occupational therapist see us in the hospital and showing us tips and tricks on how to do like pace feeding with him to see if he could tolerate that better. And then that's kind of how we saw Arrowhead for the first time.
Thanks for sharing your story about how you first came into services. If you could tell us just a little bit about what that very first conversation, what happened when Arrowhead contacted you?
So when they first came over for our first meeting, I was kind of introduced to what we were going to be doing and what they were looking for. And kind of, I don't know, it's hard to remember, especially when you have newborn twins, exactly all the details. Like I was so sleep deprived. But they kind of looked over him and were saying like, okay, well, yeah, I see this and where we could help him, or he looks fine and like he's tolerating stuff well. And when they had first come in, they listened to my concerns of what I had noticed. But then they kind of were like, well, I don't really think he qualifies for physical therapy or OT. So they told me like just keep an eye on him, and these are some things that you can do in the meantime to help him with, you know, the pace feeding, and here are other things that you can watch for that are red flags and more concerns that he's going to need extra help in, like if he's not sitting up on his own or things like that. And so we didn't actually see, we had like the intake, but they didn't really feel like he met the criteria right away. And they just told me to keep an eye on things and to let them know if I still had concerns and he wasn't developing at the right pace or in the right way, I guess. So we saw them a second time. I think he was 8 or 9 months old. And then they're like, okay, well, yeah, he's not quite sitting up yet. And I'm seeing these delays that you're seeing. And he was continuing to, like when I would feed him with a bottle, he would like choke. And I could tell that the motions in his mouth were like not working properly. And as a mom, I didn't understand why these things were happening, and I didn't know what to do to correct them. But I knew that there were people out there that did specialize in stuff like that and could give me the knowledge, I guess, to work with him better on that.
So when Everly was born with microtia atresia, we had to go through a lot of testing. And one of the first tests we had at 28 days old was to see if she could hear or not. And then that's when we found out that her cochlear nerve was intact, but she had moderate to severe conductive hearing loss. And the audiologist that we were working with gave us a ton of resources that Kansas offered with regards to her hearing loss, and one of them was infant toddler services.
I think they kind of had us set up too, like even from like an Ascension standpoint, right after Everly was born, they sent us to Children's and got it set up pretty quickly. We were unbeknownst that Everly was going to be born with that, so it was a surprise, obviously. So yeah, I think Ascension did a pretty good job, got us set up with Children's. We went to see genetics and nephrology and cardiology and ophthalmology, all of those things that she required for testing, and in that process, Children's kind of got us set up with infant and toddler. So we were kind of expecting those services around the same time we started all those testing with Children's.
So, backing up, I won't say how many years ago, to be nice to Miss Lori, but she and I kind of attended college together and built a friendship. So that's put in another really special loop into this whole process as well. But knowing Lori both personally and professionally, I knew that she was our county coordinator for infant toddler. And so when we found out that Lucas had trisomy 21, I knew that we were going to be diving right into those infant toddler services. And so really before we had even told our families, I knew that I could reach out to Lori and just tell her, hey, this will be coming down the pike. And so since I already knew about the services, I just already started advocating for myself and for my family and for Lucas. At the time, we didn't know what his name was yet because we had found out at week 13 the pregnancy that he had Down syndrome because of a blood test. Because Lori's not old, but I'm considered old in this pregnancy. And so I had already, knowing that he had the trisomy 21 and we were going to need services, I went ahead and started advocating for our family and for Lucas, and just reached out to Miss Lori to tell her that we'd be coming down the pike. And so she and I just kind of stayed connected with my different doctor's appointments when I got transferred from kind of our local OB to Children's Mercy in Kansas City. And so that was helpful because she was already willing to just kind of help answer some of the questions and just encourage me advocating for the both of us and for the family. So since I that's kind of how we came into the services. And then once you get dismissed from a hospital and you've been in NICU, I believe pretty much 99% of the time the hospital reaches out to your local. And so she already knew about us coming. So when all of the paperwork showed up, she was able to just plug right in and get the process started. So
very good. That was going to be my next question is, were you told about infant toddler in the hospital or even from?
I was. The NICU staff there, they call them child life specialists, but they talked to me about it, and I got to say I'm already connected just because I knew, I already knew about the services. Yeah.
So when you first thought about, you needed a little bit of support for your son, and you knew that Arrowhead West, somebody there could provide that support for you. What did you think that was going to happen when they came into the home? What did you think that might look like?
So from what was explained to me outside of Arrowhead, I had a friend who had talked a little bit about it. So like I knew people would come in and like with physical therapy. I kind of had the image of someone was coming into the home and going to work with your kid, and you just kind of watched to see. But I guess I didn't get the full concept of here's some actual like papers that show you these are all these different options that you as a mom can continually work on, and a different strategy each time to work on things with development. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I just, I'm so sorry. I don't know. I kind of had an image of someone coming in and saying, or doing like the one-on-one time with the kid, but not necessarily having the parent involved. But then with this, it's like, okay, here, mom, like, I know that you can do it. And I see and acknowledge the things that you are doing, even if you don't fully understand that you are accommodating your child or doing the things that instinctually that mothers do. And can I wear that? Yes, you can wear that. Sorry. Okay, what was I saying?
You were talking about how they noticed the things that you know instinctually and that you were doing instinctually with your children.
Oh, yes. So for example, like when my son was an baby, and with the way that I nursed and I bottle fed. Can I have a candy cane? Yes, you can have a candy cane. Be careful though and sit up with it. I nursed and I bottle fed. And I mean, as a mom, I knew, okay, I need to feed my baby. And that's all that was going through my head. But there were things that, when they would come in, they're like, oh, I see that you're holding him at a certain angle. And like, that's really good because it does XYZ for him. But I'm like, okay, I didn't even realize that I was doing that, but that's awesome. And then they would say, or you can also position him this way, where I wouldn't have even thought to try a different position, So it was reassuring to me that like, okay, I am doing a good job, but I also to have those extra tips and reminders of why I'm doing stuff a certain way to help growth and development. That there's more than one option to help him than just the one way that I was trying, I guess.
We're first referred on to infant toddler services. I'm sure you had a picture in your head about what you thought those services were going to look like. Can you share with me what you thought they were going to look like?
To be honest with you, I had no idea. Even after the first phone call where they, called and told me, this is toddler services, we want to set up your first, home visit, I still had really no clue what was going to happen or what to expect. I knew they were going to come evaluate her in some way and, see how they could help, guide us in a good direction to make sure that she's meeting her milestones and, but I wasn't really sure how it was all going to work or what came with it. I definitely did not know that it was going to turn into a 3-year long thing.
Resource,
and get as,
I would say I was pretty naive too. Like, I think we were very grateful that we knew we were getting help and support. And I think both of us were, kind of like, I don't know what the expectations were. Like I said, I think we felt supported right away, which was nice. Cause I think that surprise when, your child's born with differences that you weren't expected to have, it was nice to know that someone else that had some experience with different things was coming in home to help. So, but yeah, as far as expectations, I think both of us were kind of just like, well, I guess we'll see what we get. And we kind of lucked out and we got Christina, which was a great resource for us. So
yeah. Had you heard about infant toddler services at all prior to this?
I had known of them just through like my EMS experience in homes with other, folks, but I honestly really didn't. I guess I knew of them, but I didn't really know what they did specifically. Even with my mom did in-home daycare for 18 years. So she had a couple of kids, I think, over those years that had infant and toddler services. So I remember them coming to our home too, but I was young. So
no, I had no clue.
So in some ways you were naive about this whole process.
Probably.
Yeah, I never know.
So, lucky for me, I guess, which also makes it harder for Lori, is that because I got my master's in early childhood, I actually did my student teaching in the same program that she had several years prior. But so I already knew what the infant toddler services looked like or could look like, how they were set up within the state. During my student teaching process, I was able to attend some of the actual state meetings with some of the facilitators. And so I knew quite a bit about the whole process. So I say it makes it hard for Lori, just because I know that we as educators always strive to make sure that we don't forget to tell anything, you know, or share information, but yet we don't want to make the families feel like we're just repeating, you know, what they already know. And so, yeah, Lori's done a great job with being able to navigate that. And I always tell whoever comes in for services, you know, just tell us anyway, because I might know it, but my husband may not. And our nanny likes to sit in on those meetings too, so that she can provide her best services too for Lucas. And so she definitely has a different educational background than what I have or what my husband has. And so yeah, just being able to still sit it and not feel like, well, I know she already knows it, but I'm going to say it again. But yeah, so that's been kind of an interesting dance sometimes to play, just because I have the knowledge, but not everybody that's working with us has the same level of knowledge of infant, toddler, and all of those services.
Yeah, and how cool that you're able to include all those different people in those services too. But
Yeah.
that has such a big impact for Lucas.
It does. It does.
The other thing I know just from history of working with people who have a background in education is sometimes you can know all the book answers and you can know a lot of stuff, but it's very different when it's your child.
Yes.
So it's always
and I think I've said that to Lori multiple times.
So when you think about like your expectation and what you thought it was going to be like and talking to your friends, and then like where you are now with your services, how would you describe it to a new mom?
I think for me, the whole idea of someone coming into my home was kind of scary. And it really makes you put yourself out there, because you are opening your home to people and you are saying, hey, I need help. I don't know what else to do. It's very scary. And I think I was very scared. But I was more scared that I couldn't figure it out on my own. So that pushed me to be like, okay, this is what we need to do. And then now, like, I feel like I have gained more into my village of people to help raise my kids and to help share my concerns and my feelings, and being reassured and knowing like, hey, it's okay, you're not crazy, you know, type thing. And yeah, that it's okay to ask for help and have somebody come in and say, hey, I have the right tools and necessary things to help you as a parent.
Mm-hmm.
That you don't have to do it alone. And there's just so much more knowledge out there than you would ever know to begin with, I guess.
If you were to explain to a new family coming in that's getting ready to start infant toddler services what they can expect from those services, what would you share with them?
I would say support for sure. I would say you have like a sounding board. I think us being new parents, I think poor Christina got lots and lots of questions from us. I mean, everything from hey, is Everly using a bottle right? Are we feeding her enough? Does she need a sippy cup now? Like, are we using the right diapers? So I think for me, it was somebody that we could ask questions. Like, we have our parents, of course, but it was nice to have her in home. She was seeing Everly every 2 weeks initially, and then every week after surgeries. So it was nice to know that you had that resource coming in home for any questions that you had. So, but for me, that's what I got the most out of.
Yeah, and I think for me it was that there was somebody there that was there just specifically for her during this time frame to just make sure that she was getting and doing what she should be doing, or getting the help, or
Meeting
meeting milestones, or that we were asking the right questions with other providers, like way she walks or talks or hears, or like, do we have the ability to communicate with her and like kind of guide us in the right direction to make sure that we were getting the things that we needed for her.
I think Infant Toddler was pretty good helping us get connected with the Kansas School of the Deaf, which has been awesome for Everly. I mean, now that she's transitioned out of infant and toddler and we're in preschool, I mean, Kansas School of the Deaf helped us get an FM system for her. So I think Christina and Infant and Toddler Services were very supportive in getting us attached to other resources that were good for Everly as well.
Mm-hmm. You also have to be open to the entire thing, having someone come into your home at first was a little like, I don't say daunting, but I was kind of reserved about it, at first. I didn't really know how we would feel about that, but
like, is your house clean? Is she gonna matter if it's a mess?
Yeah.
Things like that.
Are we gonna get along with this person? So there was a little nerve-wracking in the beginning, but
So I had to write this out because I asked, because I already knew it seemed fair for me to answer. So I asked our nanny and I asked my husband. And so together we kind of came up with this explanation. But it's a group of knowledgeable people outside of the medical world that can provide you help in understanding the medical world, but also your real life in the moment situations. And they can help, they make you feel seen and heard, as well as have practical, non-judgmental advice. And they're a great sounding board. They're great at helping access and utilize all of the different services that most of the time you wouldn't find by yourself. So they're just a really great group of people that are just add to your knowledge and help your family grow.
Yeah. So some of the other families I've interviewed have said that it was a little bit nerve-wracking at first to have somebody coming into your home. How did you feel about that?
I'm a mom of 3 and I work full time. So it was a little nerve-wracking for me at first too, just because just having someone in your space. And then we were also in the process of moving. So there were boxes and it was just mass chaos. But our team has done a really great job of like not even noticing the dust or the boxes. And so, and they've just kind of made themselves at home with us. And so, yeah, that's been good too.
Yeah.
And being able to see my professional peers in a different light with my kids has been a really big blessing for me too.
So when you first started into services, what did you understand about your parents' rights?
That as a parent, I have the right to ask questions and seek further.
I want my baby doll.
How could you be on a little bit? It's out in the car.
It's out in the back.
I know it's in the back. I'll go get it. There's another baby doll over there by the gate. Can you use that one?
No.
Well, we're gonna have to be patient then, okay? Okay, so parent rights. I understood parent rights as if I have any further questions that I can ask for more information. If I don't like something, if I don't want to look into it further, I could also say no. And if I feel like something needs to be more addressed, like if we need to push for more I guess testing or to see a certain specialist, like I have the right to request those things. And it's my job as a parent to push for those things. And even if somebody's like, oh, well, I don't necessarily agree with you, I can be like, but these are where I see my child really struggling, and I need you to look further into it. And then other things, if somebody says, you know, hey, I really think you need to go see this person, you gotta be like, no, I don't feel like it's necessary at this point in time. For a visit, and was kind of like, hey, how are things going? And basically told her, you know, not a whole lot has changed, but I'm really curious and I really want to understand. We got my son's iron levels tested and they were extremely low. And I was frustrated because I feel like that would have been a simple test to take. And I don't know why it took us so long to take the test. And I was explaining to her my frustration with the fact that they kept telling me it's because my son has poor nutrition. And I was like, that's frustrating to me because this is my one kid who eats everything, anything and everything. He constantly wants to eat. I was like, so I don't understand that. And, you know, she was kind of like, well, I mean, she's like that would be frustrating too. And like, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And I was like, I feel like if I could just call to the doctor and say, you know, hey, I see what you're saying with is it low iron. We're working on fixing it. But like what causes low iron? And we ended up on the subject of heavy metals and how that could affect iron. And trying to go about to the doctor of saying like, hey, like, can we go ahead and get, you know, my son lead tested? And Kim was like, you know what, I'm just gonna call up to the office real quick and see what their thoughts are on it. And she helped me find the words to be like, hey, this is something that we have knowledge on, and we kind of want to know, we kind of want to get his lead levels tested and see if that could be a problem. Whereas like our doctors never really offered, like, the only reason I had his iron level checked was because someone in my family had made a comment about iron. So I was like, I wonder if that's the problem. And sure enough, his levels were extremely low. And that's what got us started on the supplement. So then she helped me figure out a way to push forward to the doctor and say, like, I want to go ahead and get this done. So investigate it further, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So part of that story, you said Kim was able to access her team or your team, the rest of it, to be able to help support you as well.
Right.
That's what I'm hearing as part of that story as well.
Yes, she was able through her line of work to connect to the right people and to get me right place and right time to figure out and get the, I guess, medical lineup in order so that we could give him the services that he needs to what is the wording? Cause what is the word? I'm so sorry. You're being very distracting. You're supposed to be going and reading a book, please. You're supposed to be going and reading a book. You're not role playing on that. Okay, sorry. To do the ruling out medical issues for the services is what I was trying to make sense of.
And you
Get out
did,
loud.
you did really nice job of talking about how they said maybe nutrition,
Right.
but you kind of did your own ruling out. It's like, no, he's my good eater,
Right.
right? And so there's got to be some more. It seems like you did you really wanted to do some more digging on what are some of the other reasons this could be happening.
Right. And as a mom, I'm always 10 steps ahead of myself sometimes, which could be a good thing or a bad thing. But I'm always, whether I'm consciously thinking about it or not, if we do this, what is it going to help? And even if I'm not fully thinking through the process in my own head about what exactly am I trying to accomplish, but more so, okay, these are my concerns and I need to investigate and I need to figure out what I can do to get to a solution, I guess. Like, I'm trying to think of an example of what I mean by that, because sometimes I just sound like I feel like I'm rambling and not making a whole lot of sense.
I thought that was a beautiful example.
So when Christina first started coming into your home, I'm sure she shared a lot about the process, what to expect. But she also, I'm sure, talked about your parents' rights. What did you understand were your parents' rights?
I kind of feel like we were pretty naive to that too. Like, it's my kid. I guess I knew I could make decisions, but I think when it came down to certain things like IEPs and, I think the transition process, she was very helpful. Like when she was transitioning out of infant and toddler to school, she was very open with us. Like, you guys have the right to, request her to be accepted into preschool. Like, if in the event that they wouldn't have accepted her, if she didn't qualify, I think she was really good at helping us through that process. Like, these are what your rights are. This is what you can request. Doesn't have to be their, decision doesn't have to be final. You can advocate for her.
Yeah, and I think for me, like directly with infant toddler services, is that she told us, and we had a say in every step of the way, everything that was happening, every evaluation. If we were in agreement with things, we had the ability to say so, and not just.
I don't think I ever felt like there was decisions being made that weren't our decisions. So that was nice.
But also we learned that we have more of a say in her care as far as, in the school system and medically, that more than you're their parent, but at the same time, it's like, what can I do for them? Or what can I,
how far do you push?
Yeah, how much can I advocate for them? So that was great to learn.
Were there any parts of that transition process that you felt like knowing how to advocate really benefited you?
Yes, because for Everly, it's a little interesting, when they decided whether or not she got, qualified for the IEP or those benefits, because she does have hard of hearing, that there was some concern that maybe they wouldn't have qualified her because she was able to do X, Y, and Z and not necessarily too behind.
Cognitively, she's right where she should be.
Right. So they gave us the tools and information so that we were able to, be ready for that and, discuss why we think she would benefit with that, moving forward with the transition. And not only that, but, what was the other thing? I'm drawing a blank. You might as well talk. I've had a headache.
No, I'd echo that. I think in the event that the school district, didn't accept her into that preschool program, we were very prepared between Kansas School of the Deaf and infant and toddler services to know how to advocate, the magic words to say, so to speak, sometimes just to, help reiterate that we think she would benefit because of this, and this. Like we were saying, she was cognitively, she's right where she should be. She's a very smart kid, but when you are hard of hearing, her speech is behind because she can't, hear all the sounds that others hear. And then I think she qualified with obviously speech, and then social emotional was the other one. So just, being around kids her age with being hard of hearing, I think her social skills were underdeveloped. So luckily we didn't have to advocate too hard. The school district saw that in her, and it was nice. But I think that being said, that was also something Christina helped us with. We met the principal way before we had our IEP meeting. He came in home and was able to meet Everly and, kind of interact with her in her own environment and, see her developmentally, so to speak. So I think that was helpful as well.
Yeah, I think the scariest part of transitioning out of infant toddler services into the school district was
That waiting period.
well, waiting, but then I was fearful that she wasn't behind enough to qualify for anything. And we were really getting the tools and information and, resources to kind of build our own case for her, which again, we didn't necessarily end up needing, but we were prepared for that. So that was nice. I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know that she could be turned down for services if, this board of, different specialties,
their evaluations, deem her
needing enough. So
Yeah, it's sort of a double-edged sword there. You want your child to make all the progress that they can, but you also want them to continue to have support.
Sure.
And the way that system is set up sometimes can be tricky for sure.
Yeah. So that was nice too. Like we were very well aware of that prior to, because of Christina and infant. Like we had those conversations, so we were very prepared. Whereas I think if we didn't have that, we would have had no clue going into that, like what even an IEP consisted of, or that she had to qualify for at least 2 categories. Like we wouldn't have known any of that. So
How was learning about your parents' rights as a parent different than what you might have understood just explaining it to other families?
I've had to think about that question a little bit because I don't know that my perspective has totally changed with understanding. It's just made it more real, if that makes sense. It's just, I know them, I can share them, I can explain them, but then to be the one getting the services, it has also made me as a professional, I know, just really make sure that the parents understand that and help them advocate better for themselves too, because I'm not always good at advocating for myself. I'm great at advocating for other people, but I think just understanding those rights has helped me be able to better advocate for myself and increase for my family.
And what situations do you find you've had to advocate for yourself, if you're okay sharing?
I haven't with infant toddler services, but currently we're currently in the hospital right now for human metapneumovirus and what was the other one? Rhinovirus. And so we've been here almost a week. And so just being able to advocate for Lucas and things that I'm thinking just based on things learned through our NICU stay, things I've learned through infant toddler, just such as I think he might be getting too much high flow and it's causing problems. And I won't gloat, but I was correct when they finally listened and said, okay, well, we'll try it, and so just being able to advocate in situations like that, because when you have a special needs child, you will meet lots of medical professionals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's pretty cool that you're able to not only learn about how to advocate for yourself and Lucas within the educational system, but those skills carry over into the medical world as well.
Yes, very much so.
A testament to why they're so important to talk about, and to understand, and to
Yes.
learn those skills to be able to move forward. Yeah, so we talked a little bit about what you thought services would look like versus how they actually played out in your home. What do you think the benefit of doing services in that way was for you?
Had some stuff. Okay. So the biggest benefit for me is that I didn't feel alone, and I felt like I was getting the reassurance that I was lacking. I feel personally that I have a lot of self-doubt and a lot of back and forth questioning. I had lost a baby to SIDS back in 2018. And so when I had my 3 other children, I like instinctually as a mom, you know that you have the things for your kid. And when they're born and brought into this world, like it's going to click. You have these fears and these concerns that what if something goes wrong? And what if I don't know what to do? And there are instincts there, but I still like on a daily basis struggle with that. Because I'm just worried. Even no matter what I do, and I think I'm doing something right, I know in the back of my mind that something could go wrong, and that there can be things outside of your own control that happen. And so in my mind, I'm like, I want to be able to have all the knowledge and all of the resources to help my kids and not be their downfall, I guess, if that makes sense. And that like I have extreme fear of that. And so Arrowhead has been very helpful in noting to me that, okay, hey, I can see what you're doing, and that's great. Like these are the things that we tell parents on a day-to-day basis what you need to be doing. And you're not even having anybody tell you that. You're just doing it. And then it makes me sit back and realize like, oh, hey, okay, I am doing that and it's okay. And then there's that fear that, okay, I'm doing this, but I'm tired and I'm worn out, and I've exhausted all my options. I've talked to other people about, hey, my son is struggling and I don't know what else to do. And then Arrowhead has been like, here, I have more options for you, and I can get you to the right people in the right places with the right kind of care. And I feel like I have gained a lot of knowledge on myself. We kind of have had conversations about neurodivergence and the way that brains work differently for everybody. And a lot of the quirks that my son has, I have come to realize that I am kind of the same way. And I didn't realize it until I've had help breaking down different aspects of my kid and realizing, oh, well, this comes from here. And then I'm like, oh. And it's made me do a lot of self-reflecting.
The way the infant toddler services were provided to your family is probably unique to over something else that you've probably ever experienced. What do you feel like was the biggest benefit of having those services provided in that way?
the easeability, like the ease of it, because she was in our house. Like it was nice. I knew that once a week she was going to be here to look at Everly. Like we can look at Everly and say, oh, she's meeting this, she's doing that. But it was nice to have that support behind you to say, oh, okay, yeah, look, she's walking better this week. She's eating better this week. Things like that. It was nice to have that support right in front of you at ease of access. For me, that was what I got out the most. That was the biggest thing that I noticed.
A big thing that I was really grateful for is that we didn't have to go looking for this service. Somebody
Sure.
presented it to us. So that was amazing. Like if that hadn't been given to us, I don't know how long it would have taken for us to figure out that that was a resource, open to us, to do Google searches. And so that was really nice. And
Or even get connected with those other services like Kansas School of the Deaf and like pediatric dentistry. She's helped us with that. Like, I just think a lot of those other connections that we ended up needing for Everly as she grew and changed and developed. It was nice to have that resource available to just ask those questions too.
What do you feel like either you have learned within your time in infant toddler services, or has so far been your biggest benefit? I know you're currently in services, so.
Sure. I am just continually amazed at the networking throughout the state, and just how, I already knew there were so many resources, but then when the tables are turned and you're needing those resources, I'm just amazed at how many connections that our team has for finding, supplies, or just reaching out because there's a question about feeding or whatever it might be. Right now, Lori's helping me with transitioning some of our services, so we're a little more local with Children's Mercy, instead of having to drive 3 hours, to Kansas City for all of those services. And so just being able to have those connections has just been very.
One thing I thought of as you were talking is you said you are often 10 steps ahead and you're thinking for the future. So I know your son is 2 right now. I don't know how far into 2, but as he gets closer to 3, what do you anticipate? What do you anticipate happening as he gets closer to 3?
Not gonna lie, I'm kind of nervous and I'm kind of emotional about it, because a big chunk of his life in the past 2 years, we've had him coming into our life and giving me structure, because I used to work and now I'm a stay-at-home mom. And so I struggle with structuring myself. And when she's come in and saying, hey, like, these are the things we could be doing, and, giving me something to look forward to and to achieve. It's scary, not 100% living what's going to happen next. And I think that's my own personal, I don't know if it's a flaw or what, but that's why I'm always 10 steps ahead, is because it scares me. The future scares me.
What do you want to make sure you learn or know before he turns 3 and is leaving services?
I felt that one's really hard, because like I feel like it's still a process for me. And I think that looking back at all the time that I have spent with this is like, for me, I have to know and understand that it is a process, and you're not going to exactly know right away what you're doing and what you expect. And you just gotta have to roll with the punches, because some days I'm like, okay, well, I feel like I had answers and I wish I knew exactly what was going to happen and exactly what I needed to do. But it's just a process, and that you got to take it day by day. And the the best thing that you could do is take the tools and put them into play and give it time. I don't I don't know what other words to use for that. And I guess like I don't know.
I think you
That is a
said,
hard question.
what you said is a beautiful summary of what we hope families are getting from the services. We hope that you are getting the tools that you need to be able to use for the future, right? You're learning the
Right.
things that you need to be able to do to support your family, your child as he grows. And that's really the best outcome that any of us can hope for the families that are being worked with. Was there any part of your services as you look back on it that you think, gosh, I really wish I would have known that?
No. I think for me, the one thing was I was so afraid leading up to the transition period, the closer that we got. I almost wish I would have had more time to prepare for that. You know what I mean? Maybe had some more information on like the IEP process. We got a ton of it towards the end, which was great. And I just sometimes think that had it have gone the other way, I think I would have liked a little bit more time. But that was on me. I didn't really look it up. I didn't know what the requirements were. I didn't know, there's the IEP or some other plan they can do. I don't know. But I just felt like maybe if I had some more time to look into that, but that's a personal thing and not necessarily any fault of infant toddler services. I just wasn't aware. And so then when it came to the time, we're discussing all these things. I'm like, gosh, I could have been
Scheduling
building a
meetings.
case for 6 months now. But other than that, no.
I would
Everything else
agree.
was really good.
Like I said, we were very fortunate. I know I keep saying this, but we were very fortunate with the person that we got. So Christina will probably be like, geez, thanks for singing my praises. I would say I think that's what made transitioning even harder for us, as Christina kind of became a part of our family, and like Everly is noticing that loss too, as well as us.
Yeah, she is.
So I think we're grateful that we were able to make that relationship, and Everly as well. I think Everly runs into Christina at school occasionally, and it's lots of hugs and lots of, smiles, and she's happy to see her still. So
I think that there can be a lot of stigma around, needing help in the home and, being open to other people come in and tell you the things that you may need to be doing better with your kid, or, just be, even just with like help. But you have to really be open to that relationship with someone. And I'm pretty blocked off a lot of the time. So I was really hesitant in the beginning, but by the end of our first meeting, I was all for it, because they're not there to tell me I'm a bad parent or I'm doing things wrong. They're just there for for Everly to help her and support her. And that's the most important thing that we needed. So
What were your concerns before you met Christina and learned about it?
I don't know.
I think just
I just
is
didn't
someone
even-
going to judge you as to how you're taking care of your kid?
Like I would maybe like judgment, but also I was just so guarded for her. She was born with all of these differences, and I just wanted her to, she's perfect in my eyes, and I didn't want someone to tell me that something else was wrong or that we needed to do things differently. But in reality, she does have differences, and she needs a little help, and we need a little help.
The first 3 months too, like we were still holding our breath, like learning, getting through all of her testing, and is she okay cardiac wise? Is she okay with her kidneys? Like there's a lot of medically complicated things that we were dealing with on at the same time. So it was kind of a double-edged sword, like you said before, like you're kind of hesitant as this person going to, have an opinion or judgment, or at the same time, it ended up being wonderful because we were open to it, and it was a wonderful, wonderful resource. So
That I do know, and Lori and I have talked some about it too, but they already started talking to me when we were in NICU just about the different services, like government services. And right now my mind is going blank, but like SSI and there's another one. And I'm drawing a blank right now of what it is, but just that there's such a long wait list to get your child those services. And so just learning more about those services, because I guess I don't feel like we need them right now, but you never know what tomorrow holds too. And so just making sure that we're prepared for whatever we may face. And so that hasn't been my top priority right now, but I know that we've discussed it, and I know we'll come back around to it here eventually. So that's really one of those things. Those government services can be kind of tricky sometimes, and all of the paperwork and documentation, and so I know that the infant toddler team is really helpful with that. So.
Any piece of advice or anything that you would like to share with other providers as something that you really appreciated or that you felt was absolutely the key to helping make this a working relationship, what would that be?
Like what would be good advice for like the trainers, the people going into homes? I just Kim was so good. It's hard to like think of some good advice, but I don't know. Like, I think throughout this whole entire journey, the best thing for me has been you've got intuition, and you are doing the correct and necessary steps that I was getting reassurance. Okay, and then I was allowed to feel my feelings and not made to feel bad for them. And so like, I don't know, I think that was really cool and important, because as someone who is asking for help, it's not always the easiest thing to do for people. And so I don't know, being understanding.
If you were to give any advice to FSCs or family service coordinators going into homes with families, what would that advice be?
Sort of extra governmental entity.
I would say if everybody could get what we got from Christina, it was just the openness. Like, she was very straightforward. Like, I'm here for you and Everly. What can I do for you? This is what I can help you with. I mean, there was never any, what do I want to say, clouded areas or gray areas about what was happening or what was being planned. It was always very upfront. And
yeah, I think for me, a lot of it was, letting us know that they're there for the child, and that everything that we talked about was just a suggestion. Not, I really think you have to do it this way, but this is what I'm noticing, and this is what I'm suggesting. And that really was easy for me to, I don't know, accept. And it really made it a good relationship where I never felt like we were being scolded or felt like we were doing things wrong, but that we could be doing them better.
I'm just like, it turned into that ease, like, even randomly, if Christina wasn't coming that week and Everly had done something or developed something, it was a text message like, Christina, sorry to bother you. Like, we just kind of turned into that relationship where she was someone that we kind of leaned on. I mean, like I said, we had our parents, but that's just a different relationship because your parents love your child no matter what. Whereas, this is someone on the outside that was just strictly there to support Everly and us in helping.
I had to think a lot on this question because the models that I've had and worked with have been amazing. But one thing that really, I guess, has stood out to our nanny and to my husband was just how much fun that they have with us, how much we laugh, how easy our providers make it feel. And so just even with all of the appointments and all of the families that you see, and you guys have to be exhausted with continually meeting families and in and out of homes, and this weather isn't always fantastic, and there's just so much paperwork and following all of those guidelines, but just remember to always just stop and have fun. That makes a huge impact on the families and the kids that you're serving.
Yeah, I think I've heard from every family has gotten just a little bit emotional with that question.
Yeah.
And I think it's a true testament to the relationships, the true relationships that are being built between the families and the people going into the homes, and how that it just wouldn't work if you weren't having a true relationship with somebody.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
I just think it comes across so loud and clear for everybody involved. So
Yeah. And when you stop and have the fun, I mean, you're building that trust piece too. And that trust piece, like you said, is so important. Because then families will open up and they will be honest with, I'm not doing okay with this, or I need help with this.
yeah, and I think just from my background, I know that relationship isn't necessarily built on day one. It's
Oh,
built
no.
time, and maybe a family who's not willing to share those times with you initially.
Yeah.
That's not there day one.
Right.
But over time, you keep showing up and you keep
Yeah.
you're there for people, then that relationship is going to build and it's going to grow, and then people are going to open up and get to what we really need, what they really need. So
Yeah. I've been, I mean, again, I'm the lucky one, I feel, because I already knew our team. But I've gotten to see different sides of them, because when you're in a school setting versus in your own home, and it's your child versus, your child at school, it's different. And so, yeah, just we have a lot of fun and we laugh.
So in my head, these interviews were really powerful, and I don't know, I've watched them probably 10 times, but I still get, just a little bit choked up listening to them. I think we just can learn so much from our families. So I have a couple of reflection questions on the screen, but I also, as before we started watching, I had asked you to sort of consider how your current practices with the families that you're working with would allow the families to answer these same questions. So I wondered if you would be willing to put into the chat, what did you glean from the conversations with the families? What are your reflections? Yeah, Dawn, I heard that too. The providers, all three of them, were able to follow the parents' lead, listen to the things that listen to the things that they were needing, and do what worked for them. I saw them, and their ITS workers are amazing, and I couldn't agree more. Yes. Yeah, letting families know that they're doing a great job. And I think another layer to that is this was kind of a unique experience for these providers that put themselves out there to get that feedback from their families too. And I think it's also important to hear what a good job you all are doing with these families. Yeah, advocacy is huge, right? Oh, I saw the one about the have fun. Yeah. That one hit me. Um, like I said in the interview, all these families took something different from the experience that they've had with their providers. And for some reason, that one really got me. Like, yes, we're there to build skills and we're there to help families function in ways that are working well for them. But they're also children, they're parents and their children, and they want to enjoy their time with their families. Strong bonds. Yes, I agree. Every one of these families had strong bonds. And I would venture to guess that I could blindly pick any family from any one of your providers and have a very similar experience interviewing them. Is there anything that you might do differently with what you are doing with families based on the conversations that you heard today? Being more intentional on what families are doing well. Building those advocacy skills. How to connect to outside sources. Yeah. Yeah, I'm hopeful that our time with Lisa Terry will, and with the final one also about how to build those relationships with those outside resources, will help all of us to just do a better job of that as well, or give us maybe some tips and tricks to build on. I know things are going really well in a lot of areas, but there's always something that we can fine tune just a little bit just to help. Yeah, I'm reading Roxy's comment here. Yeah, it was really nice to hear. These were 3 totally different programs, and they all had very, very good services, and they were consistent from program to program, which I think is phenomenal. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I don't know why I have 2 slides here. Sorry. Oh, so in addition to the families, I took the time to interview the providers for these families and to give us just some of their feedback as well. The questions that I asked them are, what did you do to make the relationship work like it did? How did you tailor the support that you provided to each family? And then I asked the question too, what would you do differently, or what is something that you want to make sure you never forget to do when you're working with families? And then just the same as I did with families, just offered them an opportunity to share their final thoughts with the FSCs. It's so important for us to take the time to reflect on what we're doing with families, and that's how we grow. That's how we grow and how we learn, is by reflecting on the things that both went well and the things that we could have maybe done a little bit differently. So this video is just a little bit shorter, probably about 20 minutes or so. And then when we're all done, I'm going to offer up just the remaining time to be able to ask questions, either that you have about this process or that you have for the FSCs that are in this video. I think they're all on today. But if not, we can draft an email to be able to ask them to respond to those questions as well. Give me a second. I have to find it. My link is not working. what do you feel like you did to make the relationship that you had with this particular family work in the way that it did?
Well, I think it's similar to what I do with most families, for all families. I just tried to remain as curious as I could about them and their child. Their little girl had a developmental delay or a condition that I was not familiar with before I started working with them. So I was learning about it with them. So I just tried to remain as curious about their family as possible. And then trying to be open as well so that we could build that trust. Because our initial evaluation was done over Zoom. So we had to kind of get all the rapport from virtual. And then the first visit was a few weeks later in person, just myself. So really kind of establishing that rapport from the get-go was different because it was virtual. And then just being mindful not to be, judgmental, because there was a difference in she was born without ears. So just, not being mindful that it was a little different.
I think that truly checking biases and judgments at the door and keeping an open mind to really listen to what the mom or family parents are saying, to build and encourage their understanding and comfort and capacity of next steps and how to support their child and when to worry and when not to worry and those kinds of things, and just following their lead. And especially this particular mama who feels that she is everywhere, and just being a support system for where she's at in that day. I think not coming in with an agenda or my own personal view of what should happen, but truly listening to a mom say, I'm scared, I'm worried, I don't know where to go next, and then helping tackle from there.
Well, as I heard Ashley's response, it made me just reflect on the fact that my relationship directly related to Lucas started with her perception of our program before he was born. It was very humbling to hear that she knew about us and that she wanted what we had to offer. And so I just was thinking a lot about how for us as programs, sometimes our relationships with families start with the perception that we are out in the community and who we are and what we have to offer to families. So that was kind of a fun reflection I hadn't thought about before. And then I would say specifically with her family, I think in that relationship with Lucas, I think it started on that day on the sidewalk when she shared with me that they found out he was going to have Down syndrome in utero. And so just taking the time to stop and listen to that conversation with her rather than bustling on to the next thing that I had on my agenda. But just, pausing on the sidewalk, I think was the first intentional thing I did. And then it wasn't any one specific thing after that. I think it's just been things that I hopefully do with all of my families, is just having intentional connections over time. So it was connecting on purpose with her through text or phone call when she was in the NICU with him, even before they came and were a part of services. Presently, it's, connecting on visits, but also connecting between visits when I know they've had a tough appointment come up, or just reaching out, saying that I'm thinking about you. I hope all my families would say that they feel noticed and valued, and that they matter to me and they matter to our team. And so just kind of those little intentional connections that we make between visits to help people feel like we care about them.
Yeah, I feel like it came across pretty loud and clear that every one of you was such a huge support to these families, but in different ways. Every family sort of had their own way in which they viewed that support as being so beneficial to them. How do you think you tailor that support for each family that you work with?
It is really hard because each family and each child and each situation is so unique. So being reflective on myself and my own experiences and knowing to walk into that door of that natural environment with the respect of those experiences. So it's not just the education and other people's things that they've taught me or I've learned through them, that it's really got to start fresh from each family. I think just being relaxed and conversational, because there are so much information thrown at families, that being able to have just a regular sit down conversation is really helpful, so that they can express their emotions. I mean, just like we do with toddlers, you got to name it to tame it, and same with these families. So I think being that emotional support along with the educational support is really comforting and huge, so that they can regulate themselves to then be focused on the needs of their children and family.
Yeah. About you, Christina, do you feel like you do something different for families to tailor the amount of support or the type of support you provide?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it really just depends on where each family is, and kind of like Kim has said, that really listening, taking the time to really listen, not listen to respond, but listen to get where they are coming from. Because you may walk into a family that has the child has lots of needs, but the family has lots of resources and feels really comfortable where they're at, but they just need, something else. Or you may walk into a family that the needs don't appear to be significant as far as medical, but they may need a lot of support or a lot of family support. And you don't know just by looking at a name and the issue, the concern area. You have no idea until you walk into that house and figure it out. Likewise, you don't know where they're at from visit to visit. I mean, some people may be rocking and going and then they hit a wall. And then you're the first visit that you come into, and you're the first person that they're like, this just happened. My whole world just fell apart, and you get to hear about it. And if you don't come in listening, you're not going to know what level of support or what kind of support you have to bring. And so, yeah, I think it's tailored family to family, but visit to visit, even within each family.
Sure. Well, I think in the specific scenario of the family that you saw in video, because she is such a good advocate for herself and her son and her family's needs, I would say early on, we listened to what she requested, and we do have a few more joint visits with this family than we do with some other families, because that was something she really wanted to have, the team perspective. And we felt like in order for that team perspective to be real and live, people had to actually see Lucas on visits, not just hear about him at a team meeting. So we do have a few more intentional joint visits on purpose, because of what I needed as the PSP, and also what the family needed and wanted. Still within our model of having a PSP approach, but I think just listening to what the family is requesting. And I think that has allowed us as a team to then be able to coach each other better, because they have live imagery of the family and of him and his growth and changes over time.
What are your thoughts on, after you heard these families talk, was there anything that you either would have changed or that you would absolutely never want to throw out?
Well, yeah, I constantly reflect and feel like I can always change somehow in most visits. But when I was listening to my family talk in this series, yeah, I was thinking, okay, we could have maybe explained some things more on the IEP side. You know, I feel you sometimes you feel like you're doing it, and sometimes I feel like, man, I'm giving too much. But then you hear them and they're like, oh, we want more. And you reflect and you think, well, did I start the process as early as I could? Could I have done things a little bit differently that way? Could have explained it a little bit in a different manner? And I guess the answer is yes, but that's what we constantly will do. We will, if we could ask every family, what some of their experiences, good or bad, were, I think that we would find some really great nuggets that we could pull out and take. And I think that's just a constant thing. It was really great that 3 of us had a really cool experience to be able to hear directly from parents' mouths, some of those things, and we can take, for me, specifically transition and see how we can make that better, but we're always kind of making it better. And then I was thinking, wow, this is really kind of some of that great information that would be great to capture on some of the family surveys that we, give out, that we don't always get to capture. But yeah, I think the family voice is so important for us to all hear. I wish we could always, hear feedback from them, even the bad.
How about you, Kim?
Yeah, it's definitely all about the relationship and building a relationship with each family, because even, you have families with different cultural backgrounds, education backgrounds, but still finding that common ground that you can develop that relationship to move forward and kind of know some of these more private inner workings of these homes and lifestyles, to better support them. But then I've also realized that I've worked so hard on that relationship piece so that we can really, be in it together for the child, that some of the other pieces like parent rights are maybe not as emphasized as much. So I think that kind of gets skimmed over at the beginning and then not so much revisited. So I did take away some pieces like that as well, like to be better about being more specific and remind her what her parent rights are. Not swooping in and being like, hey, I know we can do this, let's go for it. Because then she's like, oh, Kim knew exactly what to do. But I want, she's building some more of that autonomy parents are building, so that when we're done doing these home visits and providing all the things, we know that they feel that they have the capacity and the ability to continue it on after 3rd birthday. So I need to be mindful about not always swooping in with answers and what to do next, but continue supporting that parent.
I love that she mentioned the dance that we have to do. That conversation came up when we were working on who would be PSP. And I just had an honest conversation of, I am not sure that I will always know what you know and what you don't know, because you have the early childhood special ed training. And so just having that real, honest conversation about maybe how we're feeling, about potentially feeling a little inadequate in a certain area, and really wanting to provide well for the family. And so I appreciated her bringing that up, because I feel like that shows the authenticity of our relationship. And I want to continue to have authenticity in relationship with all families, and be willing to bring up some of those harder, awkward questions, whether it relates to our service delivery or something we don't know about, things like that. So I definitely want to keep that authentic part of the relationship moving forward with all families. The other piece that I reflected on that I hadn't thought about is just the power of laughter. She specifically mentioned that she liked that her team laughed. We laughed together during visits, and as I had a chance to see her on Friday night, that was something we talked about, and just how for our families, for some of their kiddos that are very medically fragile or have complex medical needs or a complex diagnosis or just delays are hard. A lot of appointments with people don't have a lot of laughter in them or joy. Sometimes it's filled with hard or list of next things to do or things like that. And so just that reflection on the power of laughter and how just being real with someone and helping each other find the joy in their child and the joy in their relationship as parent and child, and just chasing the joy in those moments that we have together and just the power that that is for families. I thought that was really beautiful and something I want to take away and not forget.
Any last thoughts that you want to be able to share with everybody?
You know, we have always talked about it, and each family even said, like, coming into my home was nerve-wracking, like inviting somebody into your home and getting to know these pieces of my life is so nerve-wracking. But then they were able to find the benefit and the privilege of having this service and support. So I really think that finding that being able to build that relationship is huge, and then provide that information and check for that knowledge. And yes, we know that families feel this way about having us come into their home. Some parents even decline it right away at the door, but then, okay, how can we do better? How can we show them that we are safe and helpful? And so I think it was just another good reminder that this is hard for families too. And we've got to give them grace, not that we don't, but just especially those beginning visits where it's intake and papers and talking, and we've got to find a way to connect throughout all that while still delivering the information. So I think that first intake is really crucial.
I was just thinking about what Kim said, and I totally echo everything that you said, about the relationships and how we're supposed to do the parents' rights and, have all of that as well. But I mean, we saw it, you saw it in all three of the videos. If we would not have established a relationship from the get-go, our parents' rights, the way we explained it would have just been, or it would have just been wah, wah, wah. But because we established that relationship, I mean, it was clearly they trusted us. They trusted their provider, so that when we said, this is your right, or when we explained a right, they were listening and they were absorbing that. I think more so because we had established that relationship. So yeah, the rights and all of those things are really important, tremendously important, but it doesn't mean anything really if they're not hearing it. So, and they won't hear it if they don't trust, and they won't trust if you don't build the relationship. So again, relationship is the foundation of everything, which is what we know, but it's really cool when you see it play out and when you dissect it out that way.
Yeah, I guess the only just other final thought was just, that humble reminder of just the beautiful sacrifice that families make. Sorry, and I'll get emotional now too, that they make every day for their kids, how they sacrifice themselves, how they sacrifice their time, and then also how they sacrifice for us coming into their home. All the families mentioned that at first it felt a little unnerving to have someone come into their home, and yet all of them sacrificed those feelings for what they thought the program could offer to their kids. And so even watching my family, she was sacrificing her time in the hospital with her son. She was doing the interview from a hospital room. And so I think that's a good reminder to all of us to just notice that sacrifice and honor them for that, and just really celebrate the parents that they are, because their job is hard. And just how beautiful they give to their child in so many ways every single day.
I'm a, what do you call that? When you see other people cry, you cry too. I do that all the time. So I'm collecting myself for just a second. So we do have about, there's about 15 minutes left. If you have a question for any of the providers or any additional thoughts that you want to put in the chat, this would be a great time to do that. And then I'll open up the microphone for either Kim, Christina, or Lori to answer any of the questions that you see in the chat. Or if you have a question for us, we can answer that as well. While you are thinking of any questions that you have, I do want to thank you for your patience today. Sitting through videos, I know is not the easiest thing, but it was the best way that I knew to be able to get families to participate. And I hope that you found it beneficial and found it time well spent. Yeah. And again, I'm so grateful for people willing to put themselves out there. I second that. Thank you to the families. I agree, Susan. It was really nice to have positive feedback, and also it's powerful feedback, right? I think sometimes, at least I did when I was providing services, felt like you were never sure if you were making a difference in families' lives. But I think this is a really powerful way to say, yes, you are. You're making a difference. I'm reading through the comments. Thanks, Amy. I'm not seeing any questions come across, but I'm going to hang out here until 3. So if any come across, I'd love to keep listening to your feedback or reading your feedback. But if you have questions and you feel more comfortable waiting, that's great too. But if you don't, you are free to go. And thank you for joining.